So I'm so very happy that that today we have Mr. Muthuraman with us, whom I have very deep respect for, and Hemant, delighted to have a young leader like you, along with our colleague Shreya Ganguly, who will also introduce herself in a while, as we welcome our guests from YouTube. And I will now start the webinar so that those who have registered to attend this webinar also start joining our meeting. So, good evening, everybody. So nice to have all of you in this very unique program for today. I'm thrilled that we have Mr. Muthuraman, who is one of India's most respected leaders. I have known Mr. Muthuraman since 1999, and it has been a privilege to observe him, to learn with him. And I'm also deeply grateful that now he chairs the Board of Governors and Advisory Board for our new campus in Manesar, which is called the SOIL School of Business Design. And we learn from him as a result of that association. Before we ask him to speak, I would also like to introduce the prodigal daughter of soil and the alum of soil, Shreya Ganguly, who also works with Tata Steel. And I'd like Shreya to just introduce herself.
Thank you so much, sir. It is indeed an honor to share the platform with dignitaries with such exceptional distinction. So, sir, talking about my background, so I did my BTech and MTech in biotechnology. After that, I was working with Wipro Technologies for almost 2 years. I joined SOIL in 2013, passed out of SOIL in 2014, was hired by Tata Steel. And since 2014, I continue to be with Tata Steel in the HRM vertical. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we, of course, introduce Hemant and begin the conversation and dialogue with him, I like Mr. Muthuraman to set the context. Really, Mr. Muthuraman, I think Tata Steel is the most unique organization that I have experienced in my life because it's something very unique and it's focused on, the holistic development of people is something very, very special. So could you share with us, Mr. Muthuraman, where did this whole philosophy come from and set the context for today's conversation?
Yeah, thanks, Anil. And it's always a pleasure to be part of your program. And this particular subject that you have chosen for today, where you have this youngster from Tata Steel, Hemant Gupta, promises to be a very lively program. So I'm even more doubly happy to be part of this program. You know, leadership has been defined in many, many ways in books. Perhaps there are more books written on leadership than on any other management subject in the world. But to me, leadership in any field, whether it is corporate leadership or even religious leadership or leadership of institutions, leadership of associations, leadership in sports, in any walk of life, leadership has two dimensions. One is what I would call as the visionary dimension, and the other what I would call as the architectural dimension. Visionary dimension is the one that makes a person envision his future, his organization's future. It makes him energize people, engages people, enthralls people. It enables him to make his people do some outstanding performances beyond the normal expectations. This is what I would call as the visionary part of the leadership. The architectural part of the leadership has to do with creating structures, creating processes, creating designs, creating the means to convert the vision into reality. Now, a good leader ought to possess a good balance of both visionary dimension and architectural dimension. If you're only a visionary, you will only be a dreamer. You will not achieve anything. And if you are going to be an architectural leader and with a vision, you will be engaged in lots of activities without a purpose. So you need a combination of both. The challenge here is these are two competing characteristics. These are two often competing qualities in human beings, and they don't occur in the same human being as much extent as one would like to see. Why does it happen? It happens because if you look at our education system, it is largely architectural oriented, a lot of knowledge, inputs, analytical structure, processes, and so on and so forth. It has to do with lots of left brain oriented development of human beings. Whereas what you require for visionary dimension is imagination, courage, conviction, people development qualities, and so on. So the activities that develop the left brain and the activities that develop the right brain are two different, and our education systems don't help that process in an integrated way. Which is why I'm happy to see that SOIL has started attempting this many years ago, and which is one of the reasons why I got attracted towards SOIL and why Tata Steel is attracted towards SOIL. So you have these two dimensions of visionary and architectural dimension, and Tata Steel has always sort of understood this. Many years ago, in fact, Mr. J.R.D. Tata started an institute called the National Institute of Advanced Studies with this very purpose of making sure that leaders develop in a holistic way and not a one-sided dimension or not a one-sided development. For example, in Tata Steel, one is shifted from place to place. Which is why somebody like Hemant Gupta, who is an IIT engineer, I'm told, can find his leadership position in the mountaineering, in the Adventure Foundation. Now, this has happened. You will hardly find any senior leader in Tata Steel coming from one functional orientation throughout his life. I have worked in 3 or 4 divisions. I've experienced many I've had many experiences at Tata Steel, which has nothing to do with my functional knowledge. I've been in charge of acquiring land in Gopalpur for many years, which taught me different kind of things. So it's a very fascinating subject that a company, without having a formal structure for it, it is almost like it is in the DNA of that organization. It makes people experience different facets of life, and therefore it creates very good leaders. This is my view of the matter, that Tata Steel creates wonderful leaders over a period of many decades. And one of the reasons for it is that it exposes people to different kind of experiences, allows them to experiment, allows them to flourish, allows them to find their own leadership pathway, so to speak. So this is the context that I would like to set, where I would like to hear and sort of see what Hemant Gupta is experiencing in his Tata Steel Adventure Foundation. Once again, Anil, thank you very much for having me on this program. And I wish Hemant great success in his leadership journey in the Tata Steel Adventure Foundation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And Hemant, let's begin with you now. Tell us, where did it all begin? You part of your growing up, your family, your earlier influences, and things that shaped you and impacted you as a person. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. First of all, it's my honor to be here and share the panel with you and Muthuraman sir and Shreya. Yes, sir. So I was born and brought up in Rajasthan, and I lost my father when I was 7 years of age. So I had 2 younger sisters, and it was all the hard work of my mother and the challenges which she faced to grow us up. And I think she took a lot of decisions also, which I took a lot of inspiration from her, and I think those decision making has helped me over the years. So taking a bold decision because we come from the family, like for us there was no other option to study well, and she took that decision from moving out of the village to a city called Kota. And then for me there was no other option, like either I had to study well or there is no backup. So I appeared for JEE. I was able to clear it, and then I went to IIT Bombay. I did my BTech in metallurgical engineering and material science. And from the childhood, I am the very introvert person. I'm and when I was in IIT, I got exposed to a lot of things, like being organizing things, involved in extracurricular activities, traveling. And one thing I think which played a key role in my later part of my life was attending a basic mountaineering course. So after my second year, during my stay in IIT, I had attended a 1-month mountaineering course from Manali, and that course was so I didn't plan for it. It was just like some of my friends were going, so I just tagged along with them. And before that, I never saw mountains in my life, and that was the first time when I saw mountains. And after I completed the course, I never thought like it would be helpful anywhere in my career, because being in the college, always your focus is on like getting the placement where you will get placed. And then I was fortunate, I got placement in Tata Steel, and I joined Tata Steel as a management trainee in 2011.
Wonderful. Now, in the journey of Tata Steel, what was the kind of experience you had, and what did you discover in yourself in this wonderful organization?
Right, sir. So as Muthuraman sir was mentioning, like the experience is Tata. So when I joined Tata Steel in 11, so all the management trainees have to go a 1 year training program. So during that training program, we are exposed to a lot of things, be it an industrial visit, raw materials visit, or so there is a one special course like a 10-year outdoor leadership program where all the cadre employees are sent to Uttarkashi, and that course is being conducted by Tata Steel Adventure Foundation. Tata Steel Adventure Foundation is an organization which was founded by Bachendri ma'am, the Miss Bachendri Pal, the first Indian woman who climbed Everest. And she founded it. She was the head of the foundation. And when I joined Tata Steel, I got to know about this. And I went to attend one of the 10 days course in Uttarkashi. And after coming back from it, went to one more expedition. I went to Leh. It was 6,000-meter peak. I was not able to summit the peak. Like I was not able to successfully reach the summit of the peak. But in that expedition, I was fortunate that Bachendri ma'am was part of the expedition, and I learned a lot of things from her and from the TSF team in that expedition. And as I was not successful in the first expedition, so there were two things for me: either like uh, mountaineering is not my cup of tea, like I have failed, maybe I'm more I am an engineer more. Maybe I have to work more on the more from a technical aspect. Or other was maybe I should try to reflect how can I be successful, and what are the learnings which I can gain from the whole experience. So I realized like maybe in terms of my physical fitness, my strength, stamina, endurance, and maybe my technical skills also, if I can sharpen them, maybe I can be successful next time. And at that time I was still in the plant. I was still at the shop floor. I was managing an operation. I was in the new project which was coming up in Kalinganagar. It was a greenfield project. So I was working over there only. So in that project stint only, I was going to these expedition, maybe taking some time off, taking special leave. So after my first expedition, I failed. And then after 8-9 months, I went back to one more expedition in Nepal in 2013. And that was that was the time I was successful. And that was my first major 600-meter peak. And during those moments, like I always used to dream about like this mountaineering. I used to read a lot of mountaineering books, especially like the mountaineering legends of 1950s and 60s. And I used to get a lot of inspiration from them, like Maurice Herjog or Edmund Hillary Norgil, listening to those stories. And I always used to feel like, and at that time, my friends, especially in Tata Steel, my colleagues, a lot of them were applying for management schools or masters, UPSC, and everyone trying to, some were growing within the organization. So it's always a mix, lot of people doing different things. So for me also, like what I want to do next. And then and then there were floods in Uttarakhand in 2013, if you remember the big floods. And I volunteered there. And again, like from Tata Steel, there was a one relief team which was sent. And I volunteered there for 3 weeks, worked in the zone which just faced the earthquake, helped the local peoples, distributed the relief materials. And at that time, like I was going through that phase, and I decided maybe now I didn't know like what I will be doing maybe 10 or 15 years down the line, but immediately like I want to at least for 2-3 years I want to work maybe for the mountains, like for the outdoors, or maybe somewhere in the mountaineering related to the outdoors and adventure. And then I just approached first Bachendri ma'am and our management, our vice president at that time, Mr. Sunil Bhaskaran, and Tata Steel senior leadership team. And I was fortunate enough that I was given that chance to take that transfer. And I also feel that was a leap of faith at that time, because it was not a very traditional career move, and all because there was no one in TSF who came from a technical background. and most of the people I were either from a mountaineering background, from Uttarakhand, Himachal, or from Jamshedpur. So, and yeah, so I decided to join the Adventure Foundation in 30.
Very nice. Now tell us about this whole dreams and aspirations that you had, that after joining the foundation, what began to happen to you? What did you discover then in yourself once you got the transfer? And what was your learning process like? Take us through your learning journey.
So I joined Adventure Foundation 13, and after that I went on to so as I mentioned, TSF do lot of so TSF was founded in 84, and vision of Bachendra ma'am, and TSF is to build it's a leadership institute through medium of outdoors. So we used to do lot of trainings, and so I went to various peaks, and so every day, like, it was a new learning for me in terms of like how outdoors as a mountaineering can what are the various learnings which are directly applicable in our corporate life or in our business life. And I went to few peaks, and I never knew like what was coming to me in going forward. Like when I joined TSF, I never knew like I would be giving the opportunity to climb even Everest. So, and then I went to attend 3 months outdoor educator semester in National Outdoor Leadership School. Like it was in US. So there we were put in the extreme situation. Like you are put in the complete extreme situation, and how you react to it. Like there would be moments when you are on the verge of giving up, but you don't give up at that time. Maybe taking just one extra step when you are almost over on the verge of giving up. So and then working in a team, uh, working under limited resources, working under constraint, coming out of the comfort zone. So all the small things I was learning while working at TSAF.
Mhm. Now, talk to us more about this whole aspect of preparing for the Everest journey. Take us through that. What actually happened? And what was your first experience like? I believe you faced an extraordinary challenge when you went there. Take us through the whole experience for preparing for the journey and your first experience of trying to summit Everest.
Yeah, so again, Everest was so I attempted Everest first time in 2015. It was not an overnight thing. Like I did various climbs before that, and uh, so when I went, so before that I did lot of climbing and lot of training to prepare myself physically and mentally. And during 2015, like to climb any 8,000-meter peak or any like Everest being the highest, it takes around 45 days to 60 days, and you have to face the extreme weather conditions, very cold conditions. Maybe it's very windy. So in 15 we were and to climb at that altitude, you have to acclimatize also. Like you have to acclimatize because our bodies are not adaptable for such a low air pressure and such a low oxygen available. So you have to acclimatize. So we were in our acclimatization process in Nepal on Everest in 15. And then there was a big earthquake on 25th of April 2015 in Nepal, where more than 10,000 people had died in Kathmandu and surrounding region, and even 18 people died in the base camp. So when the day the earthquake arrived, we were in Camp 2, like 2 camps above base camp. So Camp 2 is roughly at, for it's 6,500 meters, at like 21,000 feet, around 21,000 feet. And we were in Camp 2, and so that was first time I have faced earthquake in my life, and that we experienced on the Everest. And so initially, like uh, it was around 11 in the morning on 25th of April, and we could felt the tremors, and we could feel like the ground was shaking. And being camp two on the like ice and the glacier, you feel like this whole thing will open up and you will go inside. And then there were avalanches triggered due to it. And there was a point like so there was one climber with me and who said if there is an avalanche on the left side of us, then we could be in danger. And we are looking over there, and we can see the like huge sea of rock and ice coming downwards. And for a maybe it was more, maybe for a microsecond or millisecond, my heartbeat got short because you can't run an avalanche. But we were lucky that we were not in a direct fall zone, and we were slightly away from that thing. And luckily nothing happened to us. And but in the base camp, like a lot of people died. And after that, because and as it was an earthquake, and uh, expedition was cancelled, and lot of Sherpas lost their family members, lost their homes, and the whole expedition was cancelled. But at that time, for learning for me, because I was disappointed, but at the same time, it was a learning, because in mountaineering we always say like it's optional to go up, but necessary to come down. Like you can always go to the mountain if you are alive and if you are safe. So that, with that learning, like we came back. Like if it will always be there, maybe we can come back later. So that was a one a setback, I would say, but with a learning in 2015.
Well, this must have been an extraordinary experience because I remember, because some of us, including the ex-Tata Steel friend of mine, Rajiv Dubey, who was with Mahindras, he and I and a bunch of others, we went to Kailash Mountain. And there we were caught in a blizzard at, at roughly 19,000 feet. And it was quite a harrowing experience for us. And, we were much older. So I can imagine, because what we went through, and I had a near death experience in my own case. So I can see what this whole thing is about. But because I got high altitude sickness and we had no oxygen or anything like that, we could not be, sort of done that. But anyway, coming to your case, I can almost feel this situation of this massive calamity. How did you at that time source the kind of energy to go through that? And how did you deal with all the loss of people around you? And that it must have been very traumatic. To take us through how you dealt with that.
Yes, so it was when the earthquake happened. So frankly speaking, at that time we didn't realize, because it's an earthquake, because their communication is very limited. You are all only connected with the base camp, so you don't know what's happening around the world. So it happened in 11 in the morning, and by the evening we didn't know that there was a big earthquake. So there was a walkie-talkie call from the base camp, and at that time there the Sherpas informed like it's a big thing. And so at that and by the evening I realized it would have become a global news, and everyone back home, back in the company, would be worried. Like, and then I didn't had any telephone or any device, so I can call my mother or anyone in my family. And uh, and in the news, like that I came to know later, like in some of the news, like it was flashing that all the people who are above base camp, either they are missing or they are died. So like there were a lot of false news going on. And next day somehow I got one satellite phone from one of the climber. And at that altitude still, yeah, like your memories also not works very properly, like, because of very high altitude, low oxygen, your mind is not working properly. So somehow I was able to recollect the number of my mother. I called her and she was like crying on the phone. So I told her like and I had only a minute, because it was a phone call from satellite phone. I told her like we are safe, and I will call you back once we reach the base camp, maybe in a day or two. And then from next day we came back from climb down from camp 2 to camp 1, and you have to pass through a lot of crevasses. Like from base camp to camp 2, there is a whole region is have lot of crevasses, and it's called Khumbu Icefall. And then from camp 1 we had a helicopter rescue to the base camp. So in the base camp, the scene was not very good, like because higher above base camp there were no deaths or no casualties, but in the base camp lot of people died, like 18 people. Some were the climbers, some were the support staff, so the morale was not very good. Some teams already started going back to their respective places, and then I think after staying 2 more days in the base camp, we also started our descent down towards Lukla and then Kathmandu. So it was a very sad experience, and especially for the Sherpas, because for them it was also a huge financial loss when they lost their homes, and some of them lost their family members in over there.
Now, what did you learn out of this, and how did you prepare then for the successful summit subsequently? Tell us, because it takes courage to have this kind of an experience and yet get the energy to go back and try again.
So what I learned from it is like when I went to Everest in 15, I never told my mother like what can be the worst consequences on high altitude mountaineering. But after 2015, I was exposed, because it's like so I had to convincing her again was a challenge, because she was now aware of all the risk and all the hazards on Everest or on any of the mountains, like all high altitude mountaineering. So for me, like learning was, as I mentioned earlier, that we are like, if we have a life, then we can always go back. So again, for next 2 years, I was like, so I still do a lot of running, like long distance running or climbing stairs, climbing. So I continued my preparation, and maybe I thought, I never knew like if I would try everything. So immediately after earthquake, I thought maybe I will do it maybe 3-4 years down the line. But after mid-year of 16, I decided that okay, I will go back, and then I had to convince my mother again, and somehow like she allowed. And then in 17 we went, and along with me there was one more lady from Tata Steel. She comes from very humble background. She was a shop floor worker, and she was 52 years at that time. So we went in 15 also, and we went again in 17 and 2017. And for me, like so what I always so what I decide, like the way we have decided, I decided right, like the probability of occurrence versus the consequence. So you normally don't hear earthquakes happening every year. Like, so I thought maybe it has happened in 15. So there are very rare chance that earthquake will get repeated in maybe in another 1 or 2 years. So probability was very low. So that's what I thought. And yeah, so that's how we went again in 2017. And in 2017, like in terms of so throughout our acclimatization process, everything went as per plan. And on the final summit day, there were few challenges. Like I was so we started, so for Everest climb, you for the final summit push, like from the final camp, you start at around uh, 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. in the evening. So you want to reach the summit as early as possible, because normally in the afternoon weather turns bad. And so we started at around 8 p.m. in the evening. And I still remember, like after 4 or 5 hours of climbing, we were around 8,400 meters. And it like summit was still like 5-6 hours away. But there were some times when I was on the verge of like giving up. But and in mountaineering is a sport where like you don't have so many people to encourage you or support you. Like you are there, your Sherpa is there. But once when you see a traditional sports like cricket or football, you have a lot of people to support. Like there are a lot of spectators, a lot of people to encourage or support. So you have to call your inner reserve and just push yourself. So, and at that time, like it's also about like taking just maybe, so I was hallucinating also. And then I thought like maybe if I take just 3 steps and maybe breathe for some time, that again 3-4 steps, breathe for some time, then slowly you find yourself more closer to the summit. Like, so your mind is more focused on like taking those extra 4 steps instead of saying like summit is very far, very far. So that's how like breaking that whole climb into a smaller thing. And somehow like on 27th of May on 2017, I was on the summit. But in 17, like as I mentioned, my one of the climber who was with Tata Steel, like she couldn't summit. She had to return back from Camp 4. And so that was also a disappointment. Like we both of us prepared together, did a lot of training together, but she couldn't summit because uh, she got ill at in the final camp. And being on the summit, you are always worried like how you have to go back safely. So the feeling starts to sink in only you have reached base camp, because a lot of accidents happens while you come while coming back.
How wonderful. And I'll now too like to ask my last question, and I'll also ask Mr. Muthuraman's view on it, which is that how did Bachendri Pal spot the talent in you, and what did she do to groom you as your mentor? And I will ask Mr. Muthuraman. Mr. Muthuraman, when you were the head of Tata Steel, what did you discover in Bachendri Pal, and how has that whole energy, what did you see in her, which now I am asking, like she worked with you, Mr. Muthuraman, and Hemant worked with her. So what did she see in you, and how did she groom you?
I found
Yes, sir.
Anil Bachendri, is an exceptional person.
Uh-huh.
She's an absolutely exceptional person. And focus is something that we have to learn from her.
Uh-huh.
She's focused on that subject, and that subject is the subject that on which she will focus. And she will bring all the necessary qualities that are required to succeed in that endeavor into the arena, into the picture. I have hardly seen anybody more focused than Bachendri Paul on, there are cricketers who focus a lot on cricket. There are musicians focus a lot on music. She's one of those exceptional people, even amongst the people who are experts. Focus is, I think, as a true hallmark of excellence.
How wonderful. So, Hemant, what did you discover in Bachendri and what did she discover in you? And how was that relationship of she grooming you not only to summit Everest, but then to take over her role, to groom you to take over her role? Yeah.
Right, sir. So I think I was fortunate. Like a lot of people read about her only in the book. So I always say like I worked with her for so many years, and every day was a learning for me. And like there are 2-3 things about her. Like one, she sets the goal. Like as Muthuraman sir was mentioning, like being focused on that goal and whatever comes the way, comes the way, crossing those obstacles and achieve that. And one thing what I realized is like in mountaineering, so attention to the detail or like planning in advance. So it's not that you go to the base camp and then your expedition starts. Lot of things start from the city itself, like from we are based in Jamshedpur, but a lot of things start from there. Like how do you plan for it? Like taking small things, because in mountaineering you have to carry a rucksack and you don't have luxury to take everything, and you can't leave very small item. Like you can't leave a summit a sunglasses or a gloves, and you can reach the summit camp and say I forgot my gloves in the base camp. Either you will come back or you will get a frostbite. And you don't have a luxury to let's say take a Bluetooth speaker and put or maybe unnecessary items which are not required. So all these small things. So I will share one very interesting incident. It happened on K2, not relating to us, but one story. So Mount K2 is second highest peak in the world. So there was one team. There were 3 climbers, and they reached a final camp. Like so, all these peaks takes lot of time. Like all 2-3 years of training maybe, and then final 1.5 months of climbing. So they reach their final camp, and even like above base camp, even to hydrate yourself, you have to melt snow. You have to melt snow, and then you can make water. So and then you can cook food also, like maybe soup or something. So they were in the final summit camp, and next day they have to leave for the summit. They are digging out stuff from their bag, and then they realize that they have forgot a matchbox in the last camp. So just imagine a situation like they forgot a matchbox or a lighter. They don't have anything to light, and they have to come back again to the base camp, and then weather turns bad, and they never get that opportunity. So like how this small thing failed whole their expedition. And these small things also matters in our daily lives, like when we take people outdoors, when we take them to the expedition, or when we plan for anything, we have to like see the processes and like what are the small things which can be a factor either in a success or in a failure.
Yes, sir.
If I may add, another thing about Bachendri that I have often seen, she's normally quiet, and she's you can even say she's low profile, but her resolve is very fierce. She has this fierce resolve, and at the same time very calm and quiet. It's again another beautiful combination in.
How very nice. How very nice. I think already there are so many questions bubbling up in the chat box and the Q&A box. So Shreya, you of course know Hemant well since you are in Tata Steel and you actually experience him quite often. But if you are moved to ask a question of your own for the benefit of the audience, as well as you may now start reading questions from the chat box and Q&A box. And if there is a question being asked to Mr. Muthuraman as well, you may also read that. So please go ahead.
Certainly, sir. Thank you very much. So Hemant, before we start taking in questions from the audience, maybe I have a question for you. So, Hemant, could you please tell us that conquering the world's highest peak, what are the physical attributes essential? I think you already spoke about the mental attributes. So, please talk about the physical attributes you think are very essential for conquering a summit like Mount Everest.
Yeah, so to Everest, so like climbing, I would not say conquering because you can't conquer a mountain. You can just go there and come back.
Yeah.
So yeah, climbing a peak. So for to be successful in mountaineering is more about first is building your stamina and endurance, because you should have that endurance for climbing for long hours, maybe 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, or 30 hours. Second is about that strength also, because you have to carry that rucksack on your back, and then carrying that rucksack you have to climb. So stamina, endurance, strength, and also you have to build those technical skills, like how to use the rope, how to use the equipment, how to use your crampons or climbing boots, because all these things makes a difference. uh, like when you are moving from one camp, which gloves you have to use, so knowing your equipment, so all of this matters. Like someone who can be very fit and who doesn't know have proper training, and who doesn't have proper experience of using the equipment, then maybe uh, they would face difficulty.
Sure. Thanks, Hemant. So now we'll move into the questions from the audience. So we have Abhinav Iyer. He says that very earthy and endearing person, love Hemant's journey. And he has a question for you. He says that what has Hemant discovered about himself through his mountaineering voyage?
One is like about my never giving up ability, which I have discovered. Like, so I have built resilience over the years, being in those experiences. Like there were many moments when I was one verge of giving up and not giving up. But second thing is like every time I go there, there's one thing the humility, like which we learned from this nature and outdoors. Because when I'm sitting in front of a giant peak, I always feel myself a very small dot, and that also make us realize like we are nothing in front of the nature. And sometimes like within the sometimes we have those false egos in ourselves, so I should get removed and being more humble and more uh, down, ground to earth. So these are very few things which I think every experience uh, maybe every experience has its own learnings.
Sure. Thanks, Hemant. So we now come to the next question by Khurshid sir. So he says that you all must know of the 1996 Everest disaster. John versus Anatoly account differed about what happened on the way down. The case has now become a famous Harvard Business School case study. What do you think about this incident? I would love to discuss this with you and hear your thoughts.
So
So this is
Khurshid is a woman. Khurshid is also a Harvard graduate, and she is the daughter of Naushir Krodi. Naushir is a former MD of Voltas and a Tata group person, and she has, of course, made many visits to Jamshedpur and has also been on a mountain climbing course with Mrs. Daisy Irani, Dr. Jamshed Irani's wife, I understand. So that is Khurshid. She's asking this question.
okay.
So go ahead.
Hi, Khurshid. This 1996 is a very famous case study across the B schools. And so there are two books written on it. Like there are more, but two very popular by John Crocker and then by Anatoly Bukreev. And the way John Crocker has written, like somehow on some points he has criticized Anatoly Bukreev. But if you read the book by him, The Climb, the name of the book, so from his account, like, so he always made it clear. So in 1996, what happened, like there were two teams, one led by Rob Hall, one led by Scott Fisher. They were leading a teams, and for both of them, aim was to put maximum people on the summit. And to in achieving so, like somehow like they skipped, like, so they put up a turnaround time of 12 p.m. and then 2 p.m. Like wherever they are till 2 p.m. they should return back, because the weather can turn bad. But still, like to able to have more people on the summit, they continued. And then while return, many people died. I think 8 people died during that during that 1 or 2 days. So and Anatoly Bukri was one of the guide of one team, and he has that mountaineering ethics. Like he used to climb without supplementary oxygen, and that he made it clear even before joining the team. So even when he has to go for a rescue, like he went on without oxygen, and even he rescued 2 people and brought them down. But John like criticized him, like he should have used oxygen even in that situation. But if you see the background of Anatoly, I think he may, if you see the top 5 mountaineers of the whole thing, maybe he will be in those 5. He was a superhuman, and he has climbed lot of peaks, all the peaks without supplementary oxygen, and that was his style of climbing, and that's what he has mentioned. And if he would have not gone, so like you go to the summit, you come back to your camp, so it's very difficult, you are completely exhausted. Still he went back, and I think he went back twice from camp 4, and he brought 2 or 3 people down. So that's my understanding, maybe by reading both the books which I have. Uh, so does it answer your question, Gurjit?
I'm sure it does. So we can move on to Mahesh Limay's question.
Yeah, so Hemant, the next question comes from Mahesh. He says, what a wonderful journey and so easily articulated. Kudos to the management to help you in this journey, Hemant. Do mountains make you confident to challenge anything or to be humble? Does it make you God-fearing or an atheist?
Uh, so it makes you humble. I think you can't challenge everything, and I think it's person to person, but I always have fear. Uh, I think if you don't have fear, then maybe you will climb without ropes, or you will climb without any safety. But you have to take in mind. So I have fear. But somehow I tried to overcome that fear. Like 4 or 5 years back, I didn't know how to swim. But over those years, I have now learned swimming uh, and overcome the fear of water also. So I think everyone has their fear, but how you manage it, because mountaineering, people always say it's a very risky sport, but you have to know the risk and hazards, and if you know it, then only you can manage it well. If you don't know the risk and hazards, and if you go with a blank blank fear and blank without having any idea what can be the challenges which we can face over there, then it can become a disaster. But if you know all the perils in advance, then I think you can plan well and prepare well.
Thanks, Hemant. So we have the next question coming in from Arun Kakade. He says, Hemant, what was one uncomfortable truth you encountered during this challenge and inspiring journey? And how did you align yourself to that uncomfortable truth and succeed from there on?
Uncomfortable truth. So when I went in 2017, so one thing, because when you go to these expeditions, you have lot of expectations from your peers also. Like, so whatever, whether it was an earthquake or, but 2015, it will count as a failure. So I went there in 17. So it was always back in my mind that if I don't get succeed in this year, then maybe there will always be doubt on me whether I had made that right choice, being moving from a management trainee to Adventure Foundation. And people will always have that doubt, and they will always say कि ठीक है, like दो बार chance मिला उसको, नहीं हो पाया summit, and that pressure was always there. And so there was one incident, like when we were on our Everest in 17, like there are teams are divided, on when you are climbing. So teams are divided as per the good weather window you have to go up. So in 2017, like there was one moment when so we take a weather forecast from different weather stations, and so there was one good day, 23rd of May, and like you imagine you are in the base camp for 45 days, lot of anxiety, lot of homesickness, lot of things goes in your mind. And so there was a point, initially I was placed in team 1, and Payo, like who was other climber, she was placed in team 2, and there were more chances of summit having a good weather in team 1. but to be with her, like we go together. So I decided to move to the team too, and uh, and there was on the day, like when the team one went ahead, on that day the mountain had a worse weather and no one could submit. So like deciding that day and just to give in, like sometimes we always want to, like we don't want to give in, and I decided to take that decision, go into the team two was to prove to be a turning point also.
Sure. Thanks, Hemant. So the next question comes in from Rama Raju Dashradha. He says, Dear Hemant, thank you very much. Did you observe anything similar between a nature and a leader? If so, please share those characteristics or similarities.
Anything similar between
nature and a leader?
So being in nature, like I think there are a lot of things which helps us as a leader, like so facing the adverse facing the uncertainty, or facing to the adverse situation, like so when you are there in nature, you do never know about the weather, how it will turn up, and how that accordingly you have to decide, according to you have to take decision, manage the situation. And similarly, I think in the real world, the real corporate world, there are a lot of times when things are not certain, things are very volatile, like market is well volatile, even like competitors, a lot of things change because of competitors, like the COVID situation. I think no one of us was prepared how like it came, and then it changed everything in the world. And so and in the end, those who shown the resilience came out as a winner from this. So yeah, this is what some correlations which I am able to do it right now.
Sure. Thanks, Hemant. So the next question comes in. I don't have the name here. So he says, how Tata changed? How did Tata change yourself to be the best version of corporate world in terms of experience in corporates? The language is not coming out well here. My desire is to be the best version of HRM. Could you please share your life experiences which can help me become unique in some way? So the question is not very clear.
Now, basically, he's saying he wants to be the best in human resources. So, out of any experience you have, which can give him some tips on how this person, man or woman, we don't know, anonymous question, any tips on how to be a successful HR manager? And they're asking both, including young Shreya. And in fact, I will ask Mr. Muthuraman this question. Sir, you have developed so many HR leaders in Tata Steel and otherwise. What do you think this young person who wants to be an aspiring HR person, what should the person do in order to become successful? And then the two of them can also answer this.
The human resources as a subject has to do with understanding people. What makes people succeed, what makes people fail, what makes people attempt something which is impossible to attempt, what makes people take low targets. It is about understanding people. What I see nowadays, much to my dismay, HR has become a measurement system. You measure and sieve, and what doesn't go through the sieve, you throw out, and people think that that is HR. HR is about development of people. And development of people means understanding people's psyche, so that even somebody who does not think he is good enough, he is made to perform miracles because you have developed. So we must distinguish between measurement HR, which is what is today's, shall we say, if I may be a little bit critical on this HR managers, that's what they do nowadays mostly. Whereas you need a developmental aspect of human beings to be able to be a good HR manager.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, Hemant, what are your tips to a budding HR person? And Shreya, from your own journey, if you want to comment. So, go ahead, Hemant.
I think more being compassionate can be a one very necessary skill to be successful in HR. I don't know. Maybe Shreya can add more to it.
Yeah, so just extending and just elaborating on what Muthuraman sir just said. So I think people connect is something that is very important if you have to succeed as an HR professional. Because if you understand your people well, I think you have already covered half the journey. So yeah.
Thank you. Next question from Satish Shenoy.
So the next question comes in from Satish Sinoy. So he says that Hemant, scaling Mount Everest, nothing can be higher than this now. So did you enjoy the journey more than the destination or vice versa or both?
I enjoy the journey more, and I think it's not like a lot of people ask like what's after Everest. So like one thing is like you can't be on the summit throughout the life, like, and even if you have to go to the next summit, not personal summit, like not a mountaineering peak, you can't hop on from one to the another. It's more about like you have to come down again and prepare for the next journey, which would be more challenging and more obstacle there you will face. So now it's more about like not maybe on in terms of climbing maybe few peaks, but uh, uh, helping others or developing others in the similar field, or supporting them so they can achieve their goals also and dreams also.
Sure. So the next question comes in from Ruchi Shaha. So she says, what three things out of your growing up played the most critical role in making the version of yourself that you are today?
Three things. One was, I think, the hard work which we did in the childhood. So I think that was first thing. Second was uh, second was like three things: hard work, decision making, uh, and I think dedication. So how taking decisions. Yeah, I think these three things I would say.
Thanks.
And your mother's role modeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, so that's I started with like that's the like inspiration from her, and then from various people I take inspiration in my journey.
Thank you.
So the next question comes in from Amol. He says that I'm very fortunate to have successfully participated in Triple Pass Challenge Leadership Expedition last October with Hemant, led by Bachendri ma'am. I would like to know how safe it is to climb mountains without supplementary oxygen. Nowadays, it is seen many are trying to attempt various peaks in this manner. This question comes in from Amol.
Yeah, hi Amol. So yeah, we were together in October. So there are very few who have done Everest without supplementary oxygen. I think around 200 people in the world, and Reynold Messner was the first person who proved it, like it's possible. So climbing 8,000 meters without supplementary oxygen has been done by few. Like there are very few Indians. I don't maybe three or four only, and it's a completely different challenge, and climbing any 8,000 meter without supplementary oxygen. But then again, if you have that goal, like uh, you have to, so it a lot of training, lot of preparation, your physical fitness, endurance would be required to achieve that. But it's completely possible. Like as I have shared, there are people who have done it.
Thanks, Hemant. So the next question comes in from Sonal Rajoria. She says that as you are from IIT background, how did you adapt to this change from technical background to adventurous life? Would you like to go back to technical field or do more wonders in this field? What are your future plans?
So at that point of time, it was a tough decision, like to take. But I think looking in the hindsight, because always we say there is no right or wrong decision. Whatever I took that time, I think now I feel good about it, because I had I not taken that leap of faith in deciding to join TSF or uh, so. But going forward, like I think I never see myself going again back into the technical field, because at TSF now we are doing a lot of interesting things. Like one is about now we are developing small children So there is a sport called sport climbing, which is now an Olympic sport. It would be included in Tokyo Olympics. And we started this 5 years back when I joined. We started, there was no climber from Jamshedpur who was doing good even at the zonal level, but over the 5 years now we have the national champions. So we have a national record holder in female category. There is one boy who is the best boy in junior category, and now we are training them for the Olympics or the international events. So that's our goal. Like, so still we are far from there, because it's okay, we have achieved a medal at the national level, but I think the Olympics or international events like is a far-fetched dream. So I see like maybe next 5 to 10 years would be going in them, maybe grooming those young champions and and seeing them on the podiums of their international competition. So that's where I see for next. And then on from the environment front, like there are a lot of people who are going into the mountains these days, and there are a lot of environment challenges to it in terms of the waste management. So TSF always follow this leave no trace principle, and now we are focusing more on putting some sustainable solid waste management practices on these trekking trails, so they can remain as it is. Like once you go there, you will not find the trails full of the garbage and full of the trash. So we are doing some pilot project in one of the village in Uttarakhand. So how we further improve it and further expand it in other trails in the country, because the solid waste management in the mountains in US and Europe is much better what we have in India right now.
One last question from Divya, and then we will begin to summarize. Yeah, go ahead.
So Divya has a question for you. So she says, Dear Hemant, thank you for sharing your amazing and inspiring journey. Please throw some light on what mountaineering teaches about motivation, team management, and decision-making skills.
First about motivation, like you have to be, once you set the goal, you have to be dedicated and motivated enough to pursue that goal. There will be a lot of challenges that will come along the journey. Now, not giving up on at that time, then only you can be successful, and which is directly relatable in our normal lives also. There sometimes we face with lot of obstacles. Sometimes we are pursuing something new and we are motivated initially, but once we started, we faced some challenges and we just gave up. About decision making in mountaineering, the decision making you have to take, stakes are very high. Sometimes life can also be at risk. So taking those quick decisions, and like what type of decision making style you do, sometimes it's a directive decision or it's a consultative one, and similar things are applied here. And teamwork, just like you can't climb a mountain alone, there are a lot of things which goes hand in hand. Then there are a lot of people who comes together just to be successful to reach the summit. So
wonderful. Mr. Muthuraman, what is your message to all the people in this platform as you experience this young man that you must be very happy to hear, and also whatever you have experienced so far? What is your message for the evening to everybody, sir?
This has been an outstanding presentation. So first of all, let me compliment Hemant on sharing, his wonderful journey so far. My message to everybody is this: don't get cocooned in one sphere of, shall we say, thinking, or one sphere of development. However expert you are in one field, that expertise can only become better if you widen your horizon into variety of things, which teaches you lots of other things. A balanced development of human being. People think you'll become a generalist. That's not the case. A surgeon becomes a better surgeon if he has some soft skills of a nature that is required for a good surgeon. A corporate executive can be an outstanding corporate executive, not because he's a metallurgist, not because he is a steel maker, but also because of the fact that in addition to all that, he has some fine qualities that he has developed along the way. So look at it from a wholesome development point of view. That's a message that I would give to everybody.
Thank you. Shreya, your insights from this evening before I sum up the evening.
So, sir, something that I take away from today's session, and especially after listening to Hemant, so I think failure is something that is as certain as night and day. So I think what matters is that you have to just keep coming back at it until and unless you are there, you have achieved your dream. You just keep coming back at it. So yeah.
Thank you. Hemant, these are the things I learned from you and with you and Mr. Muthuraman and this Shreya and all of this community. Number one, you lost your father when you were very young, but your mother made up by the kind of upbringing she provided to you. And you made a very important statement. You said you had no alternative but to work hard. You did not allow your mind to go into this direction saying, why poor me? Why does this happen to our family? Why don't we have these other things? But you stayed focused on what you could do with your life. And that hard work and dedication then made you take the joint entrance exam and made you qualify to IIT. But something interesting, in IIT you chose not just to become a metallurgist, but you actually did what Mr. Muthuraman is telling you to do, that when you found some friends going for this course on mountaineering, you said, I will go there, because you wanted to learn something more than just metal making. You wanted to understand what life was all about and the adventure, because unless you welcome the sense of adventure in life, you don't really become a person who gets out of your comfort zone. You chose to get out of your comfort zone on more than one occasion. You got into Tata Steel, you were a management trainee, you were doing well in the company, but yet something from inside was beckoning you, and you listened to the knock from within. When people pay attention to what their inner voice is guiding them, then they become blessed. You were blessed that you listened to your inner voice and you walked on the path less traveled. You took this initiative of speaking to Bachendri. Bless her soul, what a remarkable leader India has produced. And you were able to convince your management that I would like to make this track change. And this is not just for doing it for a few months, but I'm going to do this. And the way you prepared yourself, you were hungry for learning, you were absorbing everything. This was a new field for you, but you decided to immerse yourself into learning. Then systematically, you first went for one challenge, learned from that, then the second one, then the third one. And finally, when the opportunity came after considerable training and preparing your body and mind for that summit, then you went there and that massive earthquake took place. And that moment when your heart almost stopped, when you saw that ice coming after the earthquake. But you had the presence of mind. When that moment passed, you did not allow your mind to become fearful. You did not allow the fear to capture you. You came back. You also had the presence of mind of calling your mother on the satellite phone, assure her. And then you learned from this experience and you trained your mind that this failure has occurred not because of anything that you did, but because of what the universe had planned for you. But you did the very wise thing by going right back and attempting soon thereafter. And this time, of course, you went there and you were blessed that you actually reached the summit. But your journey doesn't stop there. What I love most about your narrative is the way you are looking at your life, and the most powerful statement that you made, that you have this vision that you share with many others, that you want to groom many young people, many young Hemant Guptas early in their life, so they become world beaters, so they win the Olympics and they stand at the podium. And you are giving us a message that if you are able to do that over the next several years, you will think that life is worth it. You have given us a statement that by your giving up the usual corporate ladder to get into whatever the levels are in Tata Steel and, IL 1, 2, 3, whatever those are, and then reaching VP and then becoming CEO, instead of doing all that, you are investing in yourself because you are inspired by a cause. And that cause is to make the young people better human beings, bring pride to the country, and discover the leadership in themselves. So, what a fantastic vision. We are all very inspired and we wish you all the very best. And I'm sure whoever has watched the show today would be saying, thank you that we have young leaders like Hemant who are around to make our world better. And thank you, Mr. Muthuraman, for your absolutely amazing leadership. And thank you to Tata Group and Tata Steel for enabling all this to happen and for the magic to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm actually humbled, like the way you have this summarized. Thank you so much, and
thank you and well
everyone for this opportunity.
Thank you.